Good evening, everyone. We are in our special business meeting of January 31st, and we're meeting today on the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. I'd like a motion from Council to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So it's a little bit different tonight. I'm holding a microphone, and we have our budget public meeting. So we do actually have a nice turnout from the community in the audience today. So I do ask if you would like to ask a question or make a comment or provide a suggestion or give us some feedback, please just put your hand up. I have Sarah who's going to run around with the microphone. I ask that if you do want to speak to something, to come up into the inner circle here so that Kelsey can pick you up on the cameras because this is a public process and it is for the public record. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our staff to outline the budget and some of the highlights for everyone.
Thank you, Mayor Heisman. Linda Glende, CAO here at the district. I'm with Tanya Bastian, our financial analyst, who most of you have seen before if you've been tuning into our budget workshops. So this evening, Tanya will be providing a summary of where we are to date in terms of our budget, highlighting some of the things that are included in our budget, both operating and capital, service level increases. What we prefer, ideally, is if Tanya could go through her process or her presentation. It's fairly brief, and then entertain the questions after, if that suits the chair. So I will pass it over to Ms. Bastian to go through our summary of where we are today. So this is the proposed draft budget.
Thank you. I just wanted to start off by asking our public to weigh in because we are listening and there are opportunities to attend open meetings such as the one tonight and comment in person. And I do want to remind the public that we have our next open meeting February 14th. And I also want to let everyone know that there are many avenues for input. So aside from attending the open meetings, you can email budgetfeedback@squamish.ca or council@squamish.ca. There's Twitter @SquamishTown with the hashtag SquamishBudget. And you can also visit Facebook for District of Squamish. And there's also the www.squamish.ca for our website. Next, I just wanted to touch base on legal requirements under the Community Charter Act.
Wait, Tanya, before you're gone, just our communication staff is monitoring all those. So at the end of the meeting, we will be addressing them in the meeting. So people can do all that stuff during the meeting, and we will address them.
Under the Community Charter Act, we're required to have a 5-year financial plan bylaw prior to approving our annual property tax bylaw. Both of these items must be approved before May 15th annually, and the public process of consultation is required. More than that, the public consultation is important because Council considers public feedback when determining strategic priorities, and our department managers consider both Council and public feedback as they prepare budget requests. Further, there are some master plan requirements for public consultation. I also wanted to refer to other key resources, such as our corporate strategic plan, the long-term financial plan, as well as various master plans and asset management. And I also wanted to make note that Council actively refers to these plans and considers them throughout the budgeting process, assisting in stabilizing future rates, ensuring debt management, meeting reserves requirements, and essentially efficient operation. Following that, I just wanted to provide a brief overview of the 2017 to 2021 draft financial plan, especially the highlights. Currently, we have a total expenditure budget of just under $70 million. And that includes all funds, both general and utilities. And it's broken down between the operating side of the budget, being $41.86 million, and the capital plan, which is $28.14 million. And we want to next step into our general operating fund highlights. So this schedule is to provide an illustration that there are several other factors contributing to the increase over prior year's budget, in addition to the service level increases and special projects, capital expenditures, etc. Of note, we can refer, there's a change in provision contributions, protective services, and cyclic. There's also changes in other reserve contributions. In 2017, there was an increase to the equipment replacement reserve of $286,000, which was offset by a decrease of $12,000 to our carbon neutral reserve. Other items that have changed have been debt service requirements, major contract changes such as RCMP and transit, change in our existing service labor budget, as well as change in contribution to capital, change in allocation to other funds, and we've had a slight decrease in relation to our special operating projects in comparison to prior year. And lastly, there are reductions in other existing service level budget items. And that's mainly driven by an increase in development service fees, being an increase of $456,000 over prior year, offset by operational expenses such as office and training, leases and property management, increases in utilities, and those types of items. And you can see that that brings us to a 7.7% increase over the 2016 general property tax revenue requirement. However, after factoring in non-market growth, property tax revenue is estimated to increase by roughly 5%. And we do want to emphasize that that is an estimate. We still have the revised roll. We still have to obtain the revised roll from BC Assessment. And the roll is the BC Assessment listing of all properties in the community. And we expect to receive the revised roll by the 31st of March. And this revised roll refers to the accounting for any resolved disputes in relation to assessment values.
Tanya, before you go on, I'm wondering if there are clarification questions on this particular slide. Do you want people to ask it now or ask it later?
They can ask.
I'm in so much trouble. Would you like people to ask clarification questions when they come up on a particular slide?
We can do that.
We'll do that. You should go back to the last slide, I believe.
If you go back to the first slide, I have a question on an item. The item change in other revenue contributions, equipment, carbon neutral. Could you break that down at all?
Sorry. Okay, so the
I'm just
change
wondering what the
in
breakdown of the fund is there.
the change in the other reserve contributions.
So what's equipment, what's carbon neutral?
Oh, okay, okay. So the equipment, there was an increase in the equipment replacement reserve contribution of $286,000 over prior year.
Okay.
And that was offset by a decrease of approximately $12,000 to our carbon neutral reserve fund.
So you're putting less into the carbon neutral fund?
Yes.
The reason for that?
It is actually we're using a portion of the carbon neutral reserve fund for an item within the 2017 operating budget. So we're using it in 2017, so our contribution in 2017 dropped just slightly by that $12,000.
And I understand the carbon neutral fund, the green fund is somewhere around $167,000.
That is a very good question. I would have to refer
It's
to.
in that range.
Yes, no, that's right, it
No.
wasn't that range.
Oftentimes, we will take money. Thank you. This is going to be hard. Oftentimes, we will take monies from the carbon neutral reserve if there's a particular project, let's say a vehicle that's electric vehicle, and then we use some of those monies to purchase something that's offsetting, that's lowering our carbon footprint. So that's sort of what the fund is for, in one sense. We can't go on and on and on
Sorry,
and
no,
on and on.
I will talk about that later on.
Yes, please, yes, there'll be lots of opportunity. I'm gonna give this away, so I have control.
So back to our current draft impact on taxation. I did want to draw attention to the fact that we know the estimated impact on tax revenue requirements, given this is our current draft, but we don't yet know what the changes will mean to taxpayers, especially on an individual basis. And part of that is waiting for this revised rule from BC Assessment. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to show a little video that has been provided by BC Assessment, essentially understanding property assessments and property tax.
Meet the Johnsons. They live in a typical BC municipality. They are homeowners, and each January, they receive a property assessment notice from BC Assessment, along with all other property owners in BC. Later in the spring, they also receive a property tax notice from their local municipality. Property taxes are determined by the local municipality and based on the assessment value provided by BC Assessment. Let's assume an imaginary town has 3 properties, and all 3 properties have the same assessment value of $100,000. Assuming the total taxes needed to balance this town's budget is $900, the tax rate must be set at $900 divided by 100,000 plus 100,000 plus 100,000, which equals $0.003. In order to collect the $900 needed for the town to operate for the year, that means each property would have to pay $100,000 times $0.003, or $300. Each property pays their share of taxes based on their assessment value. This looks simple, but let's see what happens the following year when assessment values change. House number 1 is assessed at $150,000, house number 2 at $100,000, and house number 3 at $70,000. House number 1's assessed value increased by 50%. House number 2's stayed the same, while house number 3's decreased by 30%. In this scenario, the town's average assessment value increased by $150,000 plus $100,000 plus $70,000 divided by 3, equaling $106,667, or 6.67%. If the total taxes needed to balance the town's budget are the same in year 2 at $900, then a new tax rate must be calculated in order to balance the budget. $900 divided by $150,000 plus $100,000 plus $70,000, which equals $0.0028125. That means the taxes that each house pays in year 2 will change to $421.88 for house number 1, $281.25 for house number 2, and $196.87 for house number 3. The town still collects the $900 needed to operate for the year, but compared to year 1, each house will pay a difference of plus $121.88 for house number 1, minus $18.75 for house number 2, and minus $103.13 for house number 3. As you can see, how your taxes change each year depends on how your assessment changes in comparison to the average assessment changes in your city. In our example, the average assessment increased by 6.67% to $106,667 in year 2, because house number 2 and house number 3's assessment change was less than the average. They had a tax decrease, even though the city didn't collect more in total taxes. Only house number 1 with a 50% increase in assessment value had to pay a significant increase in taxes. This is a simplified picture of how your taxes are calculated each year. BC Assessment works hard to ensure your property assessment is fair, accurate, and equitable. You and your community benefit as a result. We are BC Assessment, and we value BC. Meet the Johnson.
Johnsons must not be very happy.
Okay. So with that, we move on to the highlights for our general operating fund service level changes.
Oh my
And while the details are provided on the poster boards, we did want to just highlight a few areas. So we included in our service level changes is an increase in library security, an increase to truth and reconciliation programming, increased bylaw services, management development growth, which is funded by new revenue, increased drainage maintenance, and expansion of senior center hours. Next, in relation to special projects, some highlights include the official community plan, safe routes to school, stormwater management plan, an affordable housing contract, parking strategy implementation, marine strategy, carbon neutral and greenhouse gas reduction projects, and recreation facility maintenance projects. Next, we'll be moving on to the utility operating funds. And again, I have a summary of impacts on all utility budgets. So again, illustrating that there are other aspects other than just the service level changes and the special operating projects and the capital plan. We have listed here the 2017 service level changes is the highest dollar value. Other existing service level adjustments follows, and this includes such items as landfill post-closure costs, diversion fee increases, biosolids removal increases. In relation to the change in contribution to capital, that's a change in the contribution to the capital plan from the operating side, and that's a use of fees for keeping up to date with infrastructure and assets for the utility funds. Next, we have the change in project costs funded from fees. So those are the special operating projects, change from prior year. Small change in other reserve contributions, and this is mainly in relation to the equipment replacement reserve. Very small change in debt services, contract changes, a net labor change, change in allocation from other funds, and lastly, the utility fees increase. And I did want to indicate that the utility fee increases is mainly driven by the solid waste fund. This is approximately $790,000 increase in solid waste utility fees budgeted for 2017, $200,000 in relation to water, and $163,000 in relation to sewer. So in relation to the utility fund budgets, we want to discuss briefly the impact on the fees. The water fee increased by 4%, and this is an increase due mainly to water supply growth, system expansion, and system maintenance. It's a 2% sewer fee increase, and that 2% essentially accounts for inflation. And in relation to solid waste, there are a range of increases, and they're driven by growth, essentially, in the community. And we wanted to highlight fees for 2017 single residential units, so the items that we can provide. The water fees at $416, sewer fees at $558, and garbage fees at the small, medium, and large tote sizes. And I just wanted to indicate that the small tote fee did not increase over prior year. Medium tote fee increased by approximately 10% over prior year, and the large tote increased by 15% over prior year. Next, I wanted to touch on the highlights for the service level changes in the utility operating funds. In solid waste, we had demolition sorting contract services increase, an enhanced organic composting program. For water, we have the cross connection control program, and in sewer, there's the Mount Cram UV system maintenance. highlights of these special operating projects. In solid waste, there's a multi-family organic collection rollout. For water, there is a Powerhouse Springs Well 3 replacement. And in sewer, we have a wastewater treatment plant, building envelope inspection repairs, as well as the wastewater treatment plant condition assessment. And next, we'll move into the capital plan. And I want to provide a brief description in that the capital plan includes estimated expenditures needed to pay for assets as opposed to operating expenses. And some examples of these assets will be construction of infrastructure such as roads, recreation centers, libraries, etc. Also wanted to draw attention through this summary, which is the capital plan funding sources, that the capital plan is largely funded through debt, development cost charges, and federal provincial grants. So those are the largest sources of funding. And also I wanted to, in the next slide here, provide a brief overview in relation to the capital plan expenditures. We have total capital plan expenditures of 28.1 million, and we have a breakdown in the different areas, being general government at 1.3 million, protective services at just under 3.3 million, transportation and transit at 9.8 million, economic and community development at 256,000, recreation, parks and trails, 770,000. Solid waste utility at 2.45 million, and that would be our landfill vertical expansion. Water utility at 4.6 million, and lastly sewer utility at 5.5 million. So moving on to the capital plan highlights. In the general fund, for general government, enterprise-wide software replacement project. For protective services, Tantalus Fire Hall seismic upgrades. Transportation and transit, their alternative transportation programs, the Oceanfront Peninsula Main Road Arterial, and annual programs for roads and dikes maintenance. Further, in relation to the general fund, we have in the economic and community development, a highlight would be the wayfinding annual program and entrance signage. And highlights for the recreation, parks, and culture would be the Brennan Park Arena Ice Resurfacer, Dentville Community Park, and the recreation programming van, which is expected to be partially funded by a contribution. Lastly, in relation to the utility funds, highlights for the solid waste utility would be the landfill vertical expansion. In water utility, we have the water meter installations and annual replacement programs for water mains, PRB, and hydrants. And in the sewer utility, annual sewer main replacements and lift station reconstruction. And that brings us to the conclusion of the presentation. And I believe that we were going to refer to Christina to discuss some, at the end?
Thanks. I have a few questions. I had Councillor Pryor and Councillor Kent had some clarification questions, and please put your hand up if you want to ask some questions. Yes, Ms. Glende.
Thank you, Mayor Huntsman. Just, I've heard from the AV booth there that with the AV that's happening, if people talking to the microphone could put it very close, it would help with hearing in the gallery.
Okay, thank you. Is that better? Okay, wonderful.
No spreading germs.
I don't have any more germs. I'm recovered.
I'll let you go first.
Ted, you know what? I'm going to sit at my desk because then I don't need the mic. And then we can just have this one.
Same stuff.
Thank you. I just wondered, could you turn back to the little video we watched there, please?
Yes.
And my wife pays the taxes in our family. And every year we go over assessments and that, This is trying to explain, and every year our taxes go up, and I try to protect us all in here, saying that it doesn't go like that, but it costs $900 the first year for taxes, and it costs $900 the second year for taxes. We don't work like that, because, and that kind of helped me see that. It said there in the slide that the district only uses the money that it needs. How do we determine the money we need? Like we say, well, we need a little more here, so that goes on the list of money we need. So Mr. Johnson up there, like it was $900 both years in that scenario. It's not like that in our scenario. Each year that $900 goes up.
I
You know,
suspect,
the amount of money.
I
that the
suspect it's not
district
like
needs.
that in any scenario.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to get this clear, because how do we determine that $900? Is that just like whatever council wants, or whatever council and staff want in an increase, or?
Mayor Heisman, thank you. When the budget is first initially drafted in very draft form for council consideration, it's based on the council strategic plan. It's based on a long-term financial plan policies and any other master plan, as for an example, our asset management plan that determines our priorities. So that is what drives the budgeting around what we recommend to council and work with council during workshops on what the budget looks like. With a growing community such as Squamish, and a community where we're trying to build the reserves back up to ensure that we maintain our infrastructure and handle the growth, the revenue request or requisition goes higher than the year before. So no, our scenario is not the same as 900. The draft proposed budget at this time is higher than last year. Pete?
Thanks.
How's that, Kelsey? Could you go back to the slide that shows what the individual homeowners are paying for utilities, please? Sort of rough breakdown that you had there.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry.
Where it lists the water, sewer, and landfill. Yeah. So for folks at home and for some of you watching here, just to kind of break it down, if you're looking at the fees, it may give you a little sticker shock when you see some of those, the fees all added up into one aggregate number, but you have to imagine if you spread that out across a year. So I'm just going to pick, and I'll do this roughly, but if you look at water fee, sewer fee, and say a medium tote, you're looking at around, I don't know, maybe $140 a month. And if you divide that by the 3 services that you're getting, it's not quite so bad. So you have to take that into consideration. It seems like a lot of money, but when you spread it out across the year and spread it out over the services that you're getting, it's actually quite a good deal. Actually, probably better than cable TV.
Councillor Chappelle, and I do want, this is for the public to engage in this process, so these should be clarifying questions.
So clarifying questions, we've talked a lot about residential taxes. We haven't talked at all about business taxes, and we tend to speak about what it costs the average household, and we don't discuss the higher impact on businesses that the rate may or may not have. So would you mind? Kelsey, can you?
So we haven't talked at all about how this is going to be allocated on the different classes. This is just the revenue increase needed. How it gets allocated to different classes is a conversation that has not even happened yet. This isn't even residential, this is just revenue needed.
Exactly, but we're talking about per household, so we tend to talk about per household and not about the fact that there are different classes, and that should also
I
needs
want
to
to
be.
clarify, this is not 5% per household, this is just 5%
Exactly.
revenue increase.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct?
Spread over all the
Yeah.
different classes.
Exactly, yeah, we haven't spoken to specific classes yet. Correct. Anybody else want a question for clarification at this point? And then we can dig into the details of the budget too.
I have just one quick question. We have no idea what the mill rate or what because a lot of people's tax assessments have gone up 30% or more. Do we have any idea how that's going to impact taxes this year?
And I think what that BC assessment video illustrated is, it will be very individual for every single house out there. My taxes went up over 60%, my house. So as the video indicated, if you're above average, you're likely your taxes are going to go up. If your assessment is below the average increase, your taxes may go down. So we don't know how it's going to affect an average house or an individual house for that matter at this point. And until the final roll from BC Assessment, we won't have that actual number to be actually even starting to do the mill rate. So if you're going to speak on the microphone, you have to come into the circle so that the video can get you too. So sit.
I'm going to go back to my seat, but I just wanted to add in that I did talk to BC Assessment this year, and the average increase across the whole town is 40% up this year. So if
Yeah.
you're at 60, you're above the average. If you're at 30, you're probably going to pay less taxes this year.
Okay, Kelsey just was doing this in the thing, saying, why isn't he sitting down? He's not talking to the microphone properly. But yes, thank you very
Anyway,
much. Yeah. I think last year our average assessment went up about some areas 23%, some areas 18%. So this year it's significant. So more than likely, if you're above 40, you will have that exponential increase in taxes. If you're below 40%, you will have a reduction in taxes likely. Ish. Anybody else want to ask us a question as to the information that's been provided so far? Please, if anyone would like to speak to certain budget items or things that are either in there that we don't need in there or things that are missing or comments, yeah, please come up, Astrid. Have a seat.
I don't need the mic.
No, you do need the mic.
No, I don't.
Well, you can't
You
speak.
don't hear me, can't you?
No, it's not, Astrid, it's not about that, it's about the people at home.
Can you hold it?
Yeah, I'll hold it for you.
Okay, my comments might be not very important, but I still think they are important to me and some of us. First, I hope and expect that the damage with snow and frost this winter to many of our roads is already on the budget for paving and repair works. Other priorities on the budget: don't know the person who wrote the letter to the chief paper last week regarding sidewalk snow removal versus bike lanes, but she was right on. Safety before fitness biking. Neighborhood trails to downtown and schools from Upper Valley Cliff, Hospital Hill as an example should also be on the priority list. Finally, I feel that the paved trail along Upper Mamcombe Line Channel, the tranquility and history of Rose Park, Lily's Garden and the Memorial Park is gone. And I mean it. I can get quite emotional when I walk that trail. Now it's on pavement. That spoils that park.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering if we do have some staff in the room. Can we speak to our analysis of our roads with regard to the heaving and some of the damage that may have been caused this winter? And also, we have included a significant vehicle to plow sidewalks and trails. So maybe Mr. Smith could speak to our snow plowing with regard to those elements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. I'll take the first one. In terms of road care resulting from the frost, we've got 800,000 for road rehab that will go into both repairing roads damaged by frost and roads that are just aged out and need replacing. So there's at least 800,000 in the budget to take care of that. It's not a huge amount, but it should be enough. That's fairly typical for what we have. In terms of trail maintenance equipment.
And on that point, I think ideally we would have that road pavement budget up into the $1.2 to $1.4 million range. And I believe next year it's growing up to $1 million. So it is in the 5-year financial plan that budget be augmented to $1 million next year to $800,000 this year. Is that correct?
So I concur. I'm Bob Smith. I'm the Director of Public Works for the district. And yes, I concur. We recognized right away that we were going to have frost problems with the road. So I concur with Mr. Buxton. We will be on that early on. In regards to the trails, we've struggled dealing with some of the trails, to be honest, with the amount of snow that we had this year. And it's looking like we're in good shape for the trail maintenance machine to come through this year, which will really help us out with that. It has the power and the ability to move that snow around. We're also working with Highways and Miller Cap to try and deal with the pinch point at the bottom of the corridor trail. Hopefully we can get some good progress there so that we can get some maintenance equipment in there.
And just this specific machinery is specifically designed to be narrow, to go on sidewalks, to be able to do sidewalks. We still do require private property owners to clear their properties in front of their sidewalks, but this would give us a vehicle that we could actually go and do it and theoretically charge them if they haven't done it in the appropriate time, in theory.
In theory, yes. I'll speak to the functionality of the equipment. It can do trails and sidewalks.
It's specially designed for that purpose.
Yes.
And just so everyone knows, it's $210,000, that budget item. Any other questions or comments, feedback?
Madam
Yep,
Mayor,
yep.
when do we speak
You can do that right now,
when do we speak to a specific item on the budget
right now.
that hasn't been mentioned yet?
Absolutely, yeah, anytime.
Will do. My name's Mike Sherlock. I'm president of the Senior Centre Society here in town. And I live in Ravens Plateau, have done for the last 10 years. And love it up there in God's country, as we call it. But what I wanted to address you tonight on was regarding the purchase of the van. We appreciate the fact that we're having this opportunity, because to me it's a very vital part of the seniors' growth in this town. Transportation, as we know, is not ideal for getting anywhere out of town from Squamish, and this will give us the opportunity of taking people who are housebound and not able to get around. We've had some very poignant comments from people saying about how much they would love to be able to go to different places. I want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity of being part of this and supplying this. I do want to mention, though, that the Senior Centre, when we do come for money, it's because we're looking for things to help people who've been contributing for many, many years to the community. And also the fact that with this contribution that we are making, as you can see, that's what that SSCS contribution is. We're not looking to just say, well, here's money we're contributing, so we want half the use of the van, because we'll probably be getting about, well, I think it was about 14% of the use will be designated to us, but we're contributing a larger amount than that portion in the budget. But I just wanted to pass that on, that we do appreciate the fact that we're being able to have that opportunity now to get our people out and about and enjoying our beautiful countryside around us. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Here's another speaker on behalf of the Senior Centre Society, so I apologize if we follow each other too closely. But I wanted to talk about another item that affects us. And I only came across it last couple of days, and so I had no chance to talk to Tim about it. I thought it's important enough that I bring it to your attention at this point. And this has to do with the security screens. And the security screens, item 54 on your budget line. And it asks for 2 security screens at the Senior Centre for $25,000. And the notes are interesting that go with that item. And it reads in those notes, in order to allow for increased use of the facility while maintaining security in the open floor plan design at the center, security gates need to be installed. The gates will be designed and positioned to stop access into the cash cafe, area coffee bar, and the administrative offices at the south end of the building when the building is open to the general public but has limited staffing. Currently, staff are required to monitor all areas of the facility to prevent unauthorized access. Staff areas, offices, files, and a commercial kitchen operation are left unsecure, as there are no options for preventing access during rentals and programs. Even though there may be a member of a staff on site, I think there has to be a member of a staff on site actually, they may be otherwise occupied with a patron. Gates would not only protect district property from theft or damage, but would provide security from a patron approaching a member of staff in these areas after hours. And that's a $25,000 item. And I want to speak to that because we've been there. We've done this before. In 2011, Tim, before you came on board, the previous administration decided they wanted to put a security screen in front of the office area. And they failed to talk to us before they did it, but they were kind enough to share the construction plans with us. And it turned out that the way they had planned to put the security screen, we would have lost access to the coat closet. So in winter, you had no place to put your coats because the screen would be closed in the evening when we have our Christmas dinner. So this, plus combined with the fact that staff only later found out it would cost $8,000 to install that one screen because it needed a pocket to be built and a door in front of it to hide it. The project was canceled, and they canceled the purchase order on a supplier. And I have all the background to that, whoever is interested to look at it. And the second screen would be in front of a cafe area. So I can only reassure you that as an advisory board that we belong to, we want the center to be the best possible place it can be. And we're not sure that this project of the screens would really improve the center for seniors. In fact, it has the potential to be a real eyesore because those things look industrial. We are not aware of any theft having taken place. I don't know, Tim, you haven't reported to us. Or a janitor having been attacked by a patron running amok. There's nothing much of value left in the building in the evening. In fact, one such screen, as I told you, was conceived in 2011. It was canceled. The other screen that was put in, also, again, without consulting with the advisory board, was this one here. This monster, which belongs to a technical museum of 1880 construction features, was put in the senior center in the pass-through between kitchen and dining room. Well, when we had one look at this and talked to the lady who is in charge of buildings, she agreed. This is just not on. And she had it ripped out, and that was $8,000. So we want to prevent that kind of an accident. And the other point to consider before you pass this budget item is that you don't really want to lock anybody behind that screen because there's no other exit from the area. Once you're behind the screen, you have no exit. And I don't think the fire department chief would be in favor of locking your janitor behind a screen to protect the janitor from the public during evening hours. So the other screen is for the kitchen. Well, the kitchen already has a roll shutter. The roll shutter was put in when the place was built at great expense. So what are we now going to protect with a screen? A cash register that has no cash in it? A coffee maker? Maybe the freezer, if it's not locked, but it should be locked. And by the way, it shouldn't be there because it's on our property. So again, I don't know what that screen is supposed to do. So I ask you, please, use that money. Give us maybe a trailer for bicycles to put behind that bus you're going to buy, or use it to maintain the bowling green because it's in terrible shape. And it only needs $10,000, not $25,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we can, I'm not sure if Tim needs to speak to that, but we can definitely reconsider items like that. So thank you for bringing it up. Tim, did you want to speak to it or clarify anything?
I got it here. Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. My name is Donald Byrne, and I did email, actually quite late today, my position on Brennan Park. And I think probably most of you got it, but I'm going to read out what I wrote anyhow. I've been a member of Brennan Park and the Senior Centre for many years and became a director in 2015 when I felt that the Senior Centre was being affected by increased kids use and other activities. The Squamish population is now expanding rapidly and the Senior Centre will get more busy, so now is not the time to move more kids' activities from Brennan Park. Brennan Park is a wonderful property, and we brought our grandchildren swimming and skating there for many years. The parking is great, and there's at least one big activity room and more smaller ones, but obviously not enough space to accommodate all activities, and hence more have been moved to our senior center. Pat Brennan was a wonderful mayor, and I met him when doing Squamish Harbour dredging back in early 1970s. I'm sure you would be pleased, very pleased, to see the building expanded a bit to accommodate children and all. I thought at first it might affect parking, but after looking around, saw that there would be adequate space extending from the back northwest corner of both large buildings. I don't think it would even affect the kids' small playground. Regards and best wishes. Donald Byrne, a citizen for well-planned progress.
I believe it said still a citizen for well-planned progress, didn't it?
Pardon?
Didn't it say still a citizen for?
Yes, still. Did you think I said will?
So maybe I'll get Tim to come up to speak to both those items. If I remember correctly, the recreation master plan is in.
I was going to add something. Actually, maybe Tim wants to talk because
Yeah, that's
even
exactly
coming
who's
in,
gonna talk now.
on 2 meetings ago, he said he approved it, of course, and then even today I asked him, so he
Can you
did
pass
too.
him the
But
microphone?
he'll talk a lot better than I will. Here he is. Thank you, Mayor and people.
And maybe, Tim, if you could come and sit beside Peter or somewhere and speak to Mr. Vesely's comments, please, as well. Maybe talk a little bit about Brennan Park Master Plan and future, because it is in the long-term plan, so.
Of course. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mike. Thank you, Herbert. And thank you, Donald, for coming and speaking about the budget and advocating for seniors issues. Working backwards, last question first. Donald, with the Brennan Park, we have done some cost analysis around 3 options with the expanding the recreation center. And my hope is to be in front of council in the next few months to have a discussion on costs as well as priorities, because as we know, there's lots of competing priorities for our community. You know, where does the recreation center fit? I guess the municipal hall, a fire hall, etc. I hope that will take us to the next level. And my goal is to hopefully break ground with the community support sometime around 2020. And that's a lofty goal, but that's what I'm advocating for. Herbert, thank you for your comments on the curtain. And we certainly wouldn't be implementing anything without consulting with the senior advisory. My sense is, and you guys have been there, but when you go into the senior center, if we're open after hours, it is a concern that we would have people roaming around with minimum staff being available. So a curtain at the customer service would help keeping people from going into the back, keeping staff safe, keeping customers safe. If we have the doors open, somebody could walk in and go into areas where we just can't see them. We don't want to close the center, but close the center and have somebody stuck in there, have somebody there after hours that is invisible with just one staff there. So when I approach staff and say, how do we open the senior center in the evening, one of the key ones is we need some capital upgrades to keep staff safe. But to do that, we will chat with you guys. And thank you, Mike, for the comment about the van.
Thanks, Tim. Any other people want to make some comments, feedback? I see deliberation. Come on up here.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Mayor Heisman.
This may perhaps be a strategic plan question rather than specifically a budget question. I gather in listening to your conversations that a lot of your budget here feeds from a strategic plan. My topic is attention to our lack of a heritage policy or strategy. It's an issue we've left in limbo for even longer than the lack of a marine strategy, by a few years actually. We've had this conversation going back to probably the mid-90s when there were some draft bylaws and presentations from staff on this that were actually quite good and should be revisited. Now, why this is topical? Well, last spring, a joint presentation was made by a collaboration of 7 local heritage groups, including the library and Squamish Nation, you may recall. We have, a number of us in the corridor are working with applications for some Canada 150 money right now. And this is substantial dollars, up to $100,000, and we can apply for capital projects like restoration of a building. Our handicap is that an artifact or a building that we might choose to build an application around, this doesn't only concern the Forestry Centre Society, which I'm speaking for this evening, but other groups as well. This artifact or building will have to have been already recognized for its heritage value, that is formally registered, I'm reading from the application, or been added to a community heritage register, which we do not have, or listed on an official heritage inventory as part of a local government plan. All applications must be accompanied by documentary proof of this formal recognition. So we really are handicapped, and we're actually leaving dollars on the table. We're not alone, our group, and we are actively considering a couple of projects. We have a heritage building in the community, as some of you may know, the Sawmill office building of 3,000 square feet that may perhaps be repurposed to some community groups' use. And a number of community groups are in conversation on this. And we're now needing to, if we're going to pursue this, we have to come before you within the next week for an emergency resolution. I just bring this up because it's just another reminder that it's a policy work that we've left hanging. And it's unfortunate, but we may have to sort of deal with this handicap or leave the money on the table. I just thought I'd bring that up, even though it may be perhaps a strategic plan question. I'm not sure where that sits in your strategic plan at this time.
Thanks very much, Eric. And we can absolutely entertain an emergency resolution to ensure that that building has the status you need it to have to get the funding you need. So bring that forward, for sure.
February 10th is our deadline.
We have a meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I don't have the strategic plan in front of me. I'm not 100% sure heritage strategy, thank you, is on there or, thank you. Eric, they're going to look it up and we'll get back to that. I'll just see if there's anyone else who'd like to offer any comments or questions. Yep, up here.
I'm Matt Blackman from the Squamish Sustainable Energy Group. I saw an item on the budget about giving some money to the Cowichan Energy Alternative Group, and I understand it's $23,000 initially, and it's going up to $40,000 to develop a common market, carbon market.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, there were no details on that. There was an article, Jennifer wrote an article about it. Could you care to address that? I've actually had a conversation with Brian Roberts, who's the executive director, and he had some very interesting insights.
Okay, you want to know about the program more?
Well, do you want me to just basically, he says that the money is to offset carbon use by businesses so that they qualify to, I'm assuming, get our carbon use down, creation down. And he said they can, basically, the money then can be used to offset projects like, for example, putting in charging stations for electric vehicles.
Exactly.
So is there any plan? Are you leaving that up to him, or how is that going to work?
Oh yeah, I don't need this. So essentially it's creating a local marketplace for offset dollars. And that will then go to fund local business ventures or projects that are offsetting carbon. So instead of, for example, the municipality is signed up with the Climate Action Charter, we have to become carbon neutral. The only mechanism today to do that is to buy offsets. But for us to buy offsets, we might buy offsets from some offsetting company, and they're putting up a wind farm in Namibia, or they're putting up a biodiesel project in Oregon or something. So they're not happening locally, and we're not generating the business, the economic development locally, and we're not generating the awareness and the communication and the aptitude locally to create the culture around a new carbon economy. So the idea of this is to bring it all local, and definitely thinking long-term. Like this is a funding mechanism for electric vehicle co-op program, for example. If someone wants to do that, this could be a funding mechanism for that. It could be a biodiesel project that someone wants to put forward. This pot of money created not just from our carbon offsets going into this, but it could be someone who commutes every day to the city, but then buy their carbon credits locally, offset their footprint 100%, and put it into local projects that are offsetting the carbon.
So this would be a way of reducing their carbon tax, basically? Or
just,
what would be just offset?
Just offsetting their, if you fly to Toronto or something and you offset your flight, you can buy it locally, and that money goes back into a local economic development project, or a local carbon offsetting project, economic development project that is carbon offsetting.
And my question is, are you going to leave the project decisions up to him, so he'll suggest them and then the council will approve them, or what's the mechanism for approving and moving forward on those projects?
Yeah, the mechanism for approving projects is not in council's purview. It's a standardized mechanism for things that qualify. So there's a whole, and he's the better person to answer that question, but every project that is considered a carbon reducing project has a criteria it has to meet. And we don't set that criteria. Other aspects, other governments are setting those criteria. The price of carbon is currently set by the province at $30 a ton. But whether a project qualifies or not, there's a whole slew of criteria. I don't think Beth is in the room to speak to it specifically, but we don't control that. Council doesn't control that. Those projects would be certified through the process that certifies these things all over the world.
So if we wanted to install charging stations, which we're going to need because of the rapid uptake of electric vehicles, we would then talk to him and then make a proposal to council. I'm just wondering how the mechanism works.
Well, we can get into that. Let's keep the budget, but we can get into that, absolutely.
Also, just to let people know, there's going to be 2 car share programs here next Tuesday talking, and I actually had a long conversation with one of the presidents, and they're looking at Squamish as a target area, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, you got the microphone in your hand. You're just going to keep going, aren't you?
Stop right now.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who has any questions about the budget, about any of the information that's been presented or any specific things that we've missed that you'd like us to consider, or things that you don't think we need to do? Come on up, Eric. Just stay up, Eric.
Yes, my question is in regards to the $700,000 that's been allocated, I take it, for 2017 for active transportation improvements. It's actually an issue I brought up at last year's, this same opportunity last year. You've heard from other citizens and during your council riding tour some months ago, and it's the matter of the trails, pedestrian trail connection between Belleville and Hospitalville and the Blind Channel. Now, you dealt with this general topic on November 22nd. I think it was a committee of the whole meeting, and those of us that were listening in were very encouraged by the progress report that was made by Chris Wickham and Bev Herford, especially on the west side of the highway between Pemberton and Hunter Place in Cleveland. It looks like you've got some planning underway there, and in camera we understand, and there's MOT negotiations, we understand that too. On the east side of the highway, we still can't get down to the Blind Channel on a safe, convenient pedestrian trail. And I bring this up in connection with the $700,000 because I'm wondering whether, or what is the flexibility for allocating some of that money to this particular project, which I'll just briefly describe, or is that firmly attached to items already spelled out in your approved plans, because this isn't. So the project that is needed for a long time, is on the former Hunter property, now owned by the district. We have an easy grade trail, which could be a solution for seniors, students, mothers with strollers, people that can't make that very steep and trail section down to the Scott Crescent, at which we're seeing injuries. And so that section is on district property. It's probably between 50 and 100 meters. I can't say exactly. That needs drainage work and resurfacing. And then that takes you down to private property owned by the Kingswood Group, where we'll need a trail license agreement to bring us to public property on Scott. It's a switchback. It's an east grade switchback and a solution that we've long desired. So the trail license agreement, the Beckhams, who own property on the other side of Kingswood there, they already have a vehicle access agreement through the Kingswood North site. So what we would be requesting is attention to a pedestrian access through that site. It's already spelled out in the Kingswood Land Development Agreement, it just has never been implemented. There is a plan there eventually for a pedestrian route, but nobody seems to be talking to our knowledge to have that activated. So we need some money spent. The upgrade, especially on the Hunter property section, is going to cost a few dollars, especially for the drainage work. My question then is there some flexibility in that $700,000 to allocate some money to this issue, which affects 1,000 households in Ballycotton Hospital Hill and Plateau Drive? That's our pedestrian access to the Blind Channel. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Gary, can you speak to this? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I introduced myself last time, Gary Buxton, General Manager. Yes.
Oh, that's a perfect answer.
700,000 is unallocated with respect to particular projects. We've committed to council that we'll come back with a slate of projects to spend that 700,000. So it's possible that could be on. I can't commit that it will be on the list, but it could be on the list.
Well, I can also give some good news. One of your staff persons has volunteered to come and visit with us, your sustainability coordinator, and that's really some real progress there. Hopefully we can put together a project plan.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So as Gary said, staff has indicated they're going to bring back a whole list for us to go through, and we'll make sure that's on the list as we deliberate on all the variety of active transportation projects that we got to do. We're kind of playing catch up on that front in the infrastructure world, as you know, so much appreciated. Thanks, Eric. Anybody else?
This summer we had an electric vehicles show, and we had Randy Holmquist come with the Mighty Truck, and I see that you're buying some new vehicles. Is there any plan to buy a low-speed electric vehicle? Because we now have a new bylaw for that. In the budget, is there any plan for any electric or hybrid vehicle at all?
I know staff looked at them, and I'm not sure where that status of that is.
I did send an article. There is a new incentive program. I have no details on that.
Yeah, we got it
It's just
sent to us today
brand new.
too. Yeah. Actually, I just got it an hour before the meeting.
We did review the electric vehicles, and it didn't quite fit into our needs for the 2017 purchase, but we are reviewing them. And I did get an email today noticing that they've got a $5,000 rebate, which is an added incentive. That'll help the cost.
So maybe 2018.
We'll review it every year. Every year we review for options to try and get electric vehicles into the fleet. So based on the needs, it's always on our radar.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public audience that would like to talk to the budget? Any questions? I don't see any hands. I don't want to push you too hard. Staff, do we have any follow-up or final aspects of this? Yeah, Christina?
I'm Christina Moore, Communications Manager, and I've been monitoring the comments that have come in through through our Facebook and through comments like displays you see here behind you. We have a display at Brennan Park Recreation Center, at the Senior Center, and a smaller display at the library. So a few comments, if I can read them out. In response to our Facebook post this afternoon about tonight's meeting, a comment from Pat Mulholland. Now, if we were to build the new municipal hall in conjunction with the Brennan Park upgrade, you would be able to attend a council meeting or committee meeting or pay your taxes while your kids go to soccer, hockey, or swimming. Another comment that was received at the rec center, at the Brennan Park Rec Center, concession stand code improvements so it can reopen, a second sheet of ice for the arena, gym equipment so the community center has a gym, an outdoor pool, and weights and gym for Brennan Park. And another comment from a resident on Ayer Drive. I have lived on Ayer Drive for nearly 50 years, 50 that is, 50 years, and road surface is in need of repair between the boulevard and Friedel Crescent.
So those are great. We do get a road of the $800,000. Staff will come back with a whole priority list of roads, and it's based on our asset management plan and new evaluation that happens on a yearly basis. So we'll get that list. I'm not sure when we get that list. Gary, do you know when we get that list in front of council?
No, same thing. We will bring forward a list for council probably relatively quickly on the road rehab schedule.
Okay. And on that list, we have a number of priority roads that are, and I'm not sure if Air Drive is on that list, even on our radar, but maybe Gary takes a note. Thank you. Nothing else? Nope. Anybody else want to speak to this? I really, council really values the public coming and participating in this, so thank you very much. It's really helpful and really important, and this is, every year it gets a little bit bigger. Believe it or not, this is a big crowd for a budget meeting. So really great that you're here. Going to move on. We have one early release request, so we can take advantage of a buying opportunity with regard to the Smoke Bluffs parking lot. There's a staff recommendation that council approves the Smoke Bluffs parking lot expansion capital project and authorize early release of funds from the 2017 capital budget in the amount of $95,000 in order to commence work immediately. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Race, second by Councillor Pryor. You have a question? What's your question? Okay.
My question, my recollection of the discussion was that we had not finalized the source of funding. And I'm just wondering if we have finalized the source of funding.
Yeah. Tanya?
If I may, Mayor Huntsman. So in relation to the Smoke Bluffs parking lot, the project total is $125,000 with the expectation of approximately $30,000 being estimated for the donation of materials. $66,960,000 is being funded through taxation, and that was the offset in relation to the Denville Community Park reduction. And then the remainder is being funded, and the remainder is $28,040 is being funded from surplus.
Surplus.
Yes.
Yes. So I'll make that motion.
You've already made it. It's already been seconded. Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, somebody asked in the public why the Smoke Bluffs Park expansion was so expensive, and it was somebody from the Smoke Bluffs Park Committee was wondering why it was over $100,000, because it's just a gravel, it's not requiring any paving, and it's already been cleared. So if somebody could explain the expense of the Smoke Bluffs Park.
Is there someone from staff who can sort of clarify the extent of the project so we can understand the cost drivers?
Thank you. From my understanding, as limited as it is, most of the material there isn't good to support anything on. So we've got to strip material out and replace a lot of gravel and rock to make it a surface that will sustain itself for any length of time. So there's a fair amount of clearing, some environmental work, and then a placement of a large amount of fill material that you can then put a parking surface on and expect it to last for anything more than a few years. So it looks simple. The earth there is not that great. A lot of work to do.
Thank you. Any more questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I want to add one more thing. So $69,000 was taken out of the Denville Park
There was
or the
a,
parking lot?
there was a weird piece, the DCC calculation wasn't correct, so we had to reduce the amount that was going in that because the DCC wasn't as much as we thought it was. There was a internal calculation thing that ended up with us not needing some of the money for Denville Park, as well as a small reduction.
If I may, Mayor.
Yeah, help
Hensman,
make sense out of that.
In relation to the Denville Park, we have determined the DCC is available to assist in funding for the project. And then we reduced the municipal contribution, but that municipal contribution is being funded from CACs. So that was a suggestion, staff looked into it, and it can count as a municipal contribution. So that's,
And the Denville Park is still moving forward, it's just not quite as large as it once was. Don't see any more hands, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Much appreciated. I'll entertain a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.